The Council's mockery. Emerges empire. The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for centuries. They believed war was a thing of the past. Every species under their rule had agreed to peace. Weapons were outlawed, fleets were reduced, and conflicts were settled with words, not violence. To the Council, war was a relic of primitive minds, something only foolish and weak civilizations still believed in. The galaxy had moved beyond such barbaric ways, or so they thought. Tonight, the Council gathered inside their grand chamber, a towering structure made of shimmering metal and glowing symbols of peace. The room was filled with high-ranking officials from every major species in the galaxy. Some had tentacles, others had scales, while a few had insect-like shells. Despite their differences, they all shared one belief: war was dead. A small, nervous figure stood at the center of the chamber. Ambassador Kelran, a reptilian diplomat, had just finished his report. His hands trembled as he clutched a glowing data tablet. "My lords," he said, his voice uncertain, "I bring troubling news about a new species, the humans." At first, the chamber remained silent. Then, a soft chuckle echoed through the room. It started with one voice, then another, and soon, the entire council was laughing. "Warriors," scoffed High Chancellor Orvis, a tall alien with a body covered in silver-blue feathers. "You expect us to believe that these humans still engage in war? Impossible." Kelran gulped, his throat dry. "But my lords, they do not follow our ways. They have fleets, real war fleets. They build weapons, they train for combat. They do not seek diplomacy, they prepare for battle." More laughter erupted in the chamber. One of the elder council members, a jellyfish-like being known as Elder Zilva, waved a translucent limb dismissively. "What foolishness! This is nothing more than the paranoia of a lesser race. No species would be foolish enough to challenge us. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years." Kelran took a deep breath. He knew he was losing them. But they are advancing quickly, faster than any race before. They have colonized worlds in mere decades where others took centuries. They have defied gravity, broken hyperspace records, and yet, interrupted a deep voice, they have not come to us for guidance. Kelran turned to face Lord Vorton, a massive armored being who led the Council's security forces. If they were intelligent, Vorton said, they would have sent envoys, asked for permission to expand. Instead, they act like savages, building fleets without our approval. Kelran's tail flicked nervously. "That is exactly my point, my lord. They do not ask for permission. They take what they want." Silence followed his words. A few members exchanged uneasy glances. Then Orvis laughed again. "So what? If they try to threaten us, we will simply remind them of who we are. The Council rules all. No species, no matter how stubborn, can stand against our might." Kelran hesitated. He knew what would happen if he continued to argue. But he also knew the truth, and the truth was terrifying. "My lords," he said, lowering his voice, "I fear they will not come as diplomats. They will come as conquerors." Orvis sighed, shaking his feathered head. "Enough of this nonsense. The meeting is over." Kelran opened his mouth to protest, but the decision was final. The council had spoken. As the members stood to leave, a soft, rhythmic beeping sound echoed through the chamber. The lights flickered slightly. A holographic screen appeared in the center of the room. A robotic voice announced, "Urgent transmission. High-priority distress signal received from the Vathon system." Kelran felt his scales tighten. The Vathon system was a council stronghold. Why would they be sending a distress signal? Orvis frowned. "Put it through." The screen flickered, then showed the terrified face of an alien captain. Smoke filled his ship's control room, and alarms blared in the background. "This is Captain Urix of the Vathon Defense Fleet." His voice was desperate. "We are under attack. They came from nowhere. We cannot stop them. We need reinforce him." The transmission cut out. Silence. Then, a new image appeared. A fleet. A fleet larger than any the Council had seen in centuries. Ships armored in black steel, engines burning with the power of 1,000 suns. Warships, not transport ships. Weapons, not diplomats. And at the head of the fleet, a single human vessel stood out. Unlike the others, its hull was pristine, untouched by battle. As if it had never once faced a threat it could not crush. A transmission opened. A human figure appeared, standing tall in a sleek black uniform. A voice, calm but filled with cold authority, spoke 3 simple words. "We are here." The screen flickered and went dark. The council chamber, once filled with mocking laughter, now stood in horrified silence. Kelleran's voice was barely a whisper. They did not come to talk. He looked around at the stunned council members. They came to end you. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council felt fear. And humanity had only just arrived. Humanity's arrival. The Galactic Council chamber was frozen in silence. Every leader in the room stared at the darkened screen, their eyes wide with disbelief. Just moments ago, they had laughed at the idea of war. Now, an entire fleet of human warships had arrived, without warning, without diplomacy, and without fear. Chancellor Orvis' feathers were ruffled, his usual confidence shaken. "This must be a mistake," he stammered. "Perhaps the transmission was corrupted. Maybe the fleet belongs to..." A deep alarm rang through the council chamber. The room's holographic display flickered to life again, this time showing a live feed from the outer system. What they saw made even the bravest among them shudder. The human fleet had already bypassed the outer patrols. The Council's watch stations, meant to detect threats weeks in advance, had failed to stop them. Now, the warships loomed just outside the capital world's orbit, waiting. They shouldn't be able to do this. Elder Zilva's translucent limbs trembled. How did they get past our defenses? Our early warning systems. No fleet has ever moved this fast. Kelleran, the only one who had warned them, felt cold dread settle in his bones. He had studied the humans more than anyone else. He knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. "They have been preparing for this moment," Kelleran whispered. "They knew exactly where to strike. And now, they want us to know that we can't stop them." Orvis clenched his jaw, trying to regain control of the room. "Send an immediate diplomatic transmission," he barked. "We will reason with them. They have no right to enter our space unannounced." A technician tapped rapidly on a glowing console. "Transmission channel open, Chancellor." Orvis straightened his robes, his voice calm and commanding. "This is High Chancellor Orvis of the Galactic Council. You have entered restricted space. State your intentions immediately." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, without warning, the entire star system went dark. The glowing symbols, the floating screens, even the massive orbital satellites surrounding the planet, all of them blinked out of existence. Every piece of technology, every communication relay, everything the Council relied upon to rule, was gone. Panic swept through the chamber. Elder Zilva gasped. "This is impossible. Our entire system is down. How did they?" The holographic screen flickered back on. This time, a human face appeared. The figure was tall, dressed in a dark navy uniform with golden insignia. His face was calm, but his eyes were like steel, cold, calculating. A commander who had never lost a battle, and never planned to. Admiral Alexander Drake. When he spoke, his voice was measured, but it carried absolute authority. "You ignored history. You erased war from your records. You thought you were safe." Drake's gaze locked onto Orvis, as if he could see straight into his soul. "You were wrong." Orvis swallowed hard. We are a peaceful civilization. We do not engage in war. There is no need for this hostility." Drake didn't even blink. "Then you will fall." A low hum filled the air as the human fleet moved closer. The largest ship, an imposing dreadnought, unlike anything the galaxy had seen, began to descend toward the planet's surface. Kelren's voice was barely a whisper. "They are not here for peace. They are here to show us what war truly is." The Council had spent centuries laughing at war. Now, war had come to laugh at them, and it had the face of humanity. The forgotten war. The Council chamber was in chaos. High-ranking officials shouted over one another, their voices rising in fear and confusion. The galactic capital was defenseless. Every system, every defense grid, and every planetary shield had been shut down in an instant. No one had ever done this before. No one was supposed to be able to do this. Chancellor Orvis's feathers were slick with sweat. "We must re-establish communication," he snapped. "There must be a way to override." "There isn't," Kelren interrupted. His voice was eerily calm. "They have disabled everything. They control the system now." Orvis turned on him, his eyes burning with frustration. "Then tell me, Ambassador, what do these humans want?" Kelren hesitated. He already knew the answer, but he didn't want to speak it aloud. He had spent years studying humanity, tracking their movements, reading their history, the real history, not the one the Council liked to believe. And now, it was too late. Before he could answer, the holographic screen flickered to life again. Admiral Alexander Drake's stern face appeared once more. Behind him, the vast human fleet loomed like a storm on the horizon. "You do not remember, do you?" Drake's voice was cold, like a blade slicing through the air. "You do not remember the species you wiped from history." Silence. Elder Zilva's translucent form shuddered. We have done nothing of the sort." Drake's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. "Lies," he said simply. A new image appeared on the screen. A planet, burning, cities reduced to rubble, space stations floating in debris, a civilization wiped from existence. Kelren's stomach twisted. He knew this world. He had seen the records, or rather, the fragments of records that had survived. "It was you," Drake continued. "The Council decided they were. What was the word? Too aggressive. So you destroy them." His gaze darkened. "You told the galaxy they were warmongers. You erased them from existence and buried their name in the past." Kelren could feel the weight of the Admiral's words. The Council had always hidden the truth. Centuries ago, when the galaxy was still unstable, a powerful species had refused to bow to the Council's rule. They had kept their fleets, trained their soldiers, and defended their way of life. The Council had called them dangerous. The Council had called them barbaric. The Council had called them human. Kelren's breath caught in his throat. The war had never ended. The survivors had never forgotten. And now, they had returned. Orvis tried to regain control of the conversation. "We did what was necessary for peace," he insisted. "If we had allowed war to continue, the galaxy would have suffered. We..." Drake's voice cut through the Council's protests. "You thought you could erase us. You thought you could bury us in the past." The holographic display zoomed in on one of the massive human warships. Along its side, in bold silver letters, was a single name. Erebus. Kelren knew that name. It was the last human battleship recorded in Council archives, the one that was supposed to have been destroyed centuries ago. Drake's gaze was unyielding. "We have spent generations rebuilding what you destroyed. We have trained, we have grown, and now..." He leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Now we are here to finish what you started." A heavy silence filled the chamber. Kelren's claws dug into his seat. He could already see the future. The Council had mocked war. The Council had believed they were safe. But war had not died. It had been waiting. And now, humanity had returned. The first strike. The Galactic Council chamber was deathly silent. Every leader present had paled, or the equivalent of paling for their species. The revelation was undeniable. Humanity had never been destroyed. They had simply waited. Now they had returned, not as diplomats, not as survivors, but as executioners. Kelrin could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. His claws dug into the armrest of his chair. This was the moment he had warned them about. And they had laughed at him. Now, no one was laughing. Admiral Drake's holographic image remained on the screen, his expression calm yet unshakable. He had delivered his message. He had exposed the Council's lies. Now, it was time for an answer. High Chancellor Orvis inhaled sharply, his voice trembling but firm. This is a misunderstanding. We have evolved beyond war. There is no need for this aggression. Drake's gaze hardened. And yet, the moment you felt threatened, you scrambled for weapons you no longer had. The holographic screen split into several live feeds. The human fleet was moving. Massive dreadnoughts, sleek destroyers, and powerful battleships glided through the void of space, unstoppable. Kelrin's mouth went dry. This is not a show of power. This is a warning. Then, the council members heard it. A deep, rumbling hum, so low that it wasn't just heard but felt. The entire planet seemed to vibrate. The lights in the chamber flickered. It was coming from the human fleet. Kelrin's breath caught in his throat. He knew what was happening. They are charging their weapons. Orvis's feathers fluffed in panic. And no, you wouldn't dare. We are the Galactic Council. You cannot just. Drake tilted his head. Cannot. The hum intensified. Kelrin felt pure terror creeping up his spine. They're not bluffing. Elder Zilva's translucent tendrils trembled. Please, there must be another way. We can negotiate. Drake's gaze didn't waver. You did not negotiate with my ancestors. You did not offer them mercy. You erased them from existence. A brief silence. Then Drake spoke again. You have 60 seconds. The chamber exploded into chaos. Council members shouted. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others insisted on sending whatever defensive ships were left, despite knowing they would be crushed instantly. Equals. Kelrin forced himself to speak through the madness. We have nothing that can stop them. Our fleets are ceremonial, our weapons outdated. If we fight, we lose everything. Orvis's beak clenched shut. The hum of the fleet's weapons grew louder. 30 seconds. Drake's voice came again. Kelrin turned desperately toward Orvis. Chancellor, please, if we do not surrender, we will be destroyed. Orvis trembled. His pride, his power, all of it meant nothing now. He turned back toward the screen. We surrender. The moment the words left his mouth, the hum stopped. For a second, no one spoke. No one moved. Drake's expression didn't change. Acknowledged. Then the screen flickered and went dark. The war had ended before it even began. But humanity's return had only just begun. The Council's desperation. The Galactic Council chamber remained in stunned silence. Humanity had won, without firing a single shot. Chancellor Orvis slumped in his chair, his feathers disheveled, his hands trembling. He had just surrendered the most powerful organization in the galaxy to an enemy they had once erased from history. Kelrin felt his heart hammering in his chest. His mind raced with possibilities. What happens now? Humanity had demanded surrender, but what did that mean? Would they conquer the Council? Would they dismantle the government? Would they wipe them out completely? No one knew. A heavy silence hung over the chamber. Then a soft chime echoed. The holographic screen flickered back to life. Admiral Drake's cold, unreadable gaze returned. You have surrendered, he said, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of absolute power. The war is over. The words should have been a relief, but instead they carried a deeper dread. Kelrin saw it in the faces of the other council members. They weren't relieved. They were terrified. Drake continued. The Galactic Council will no longer rule this galaxy. Your power, your influence, your control over entire civilizations. It ends today. Orvis tensed. Then what happens to us? To the Council. Drake's gaze didn't waver. You will remain in place, for now, under our watch. Every decision you make, every order you give, will be monitored. If we detect even the slightest attempt to rebuild your tyranny. He leaned forward. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. You will not get a second chance. Kelrin felt ice in his veins. This was worse than annihilation. The Council had been broken. Humanity had taken everything. But instead of destroying them, they had made them prisoners. Orvis, his pride shattered, tried to bargain. We can be of use. We can help manage the transition. Drake simply tilted his head. You misunderstand. The holographic display shifted. A new fleet appeared. Not just warships, colonization vessels. Hundreds of them. Thousands. An entire empire's worth of ships. Your rule is over, Drake said. A new order is beginning. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to hold it. Kelran's breath caught. Humanity wasn't just taking power. They were taking the galaxy itself. And there was nothing the Council could do to stop them. The battle that changed the galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber was drowning in silence. The realization had settled in. Humanity now controlled everything. But not everyone was willing to accept it. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. The Council's surrender was met with shock, fear, and anger. Some species welcomed humanity's rise, relieved to be free from the Council's rule. Others, however, saw this as the ultimate betrayal, and they were ready to fight. The Rogue Fleet. In the outer systems, a rogue faction of the Galactic Council had refused to obey the surrender. Led by General Cyros, a battle-hardened warlord from the Centauri species, they gathered what remained of the Council's military forces. We will not bow to these humans, Cyros growled, his reptilian eyes burning with fury. The Council may have surrendered, but we have not. Across a dozen worlds, warships were rearmed. Fleets were rebuilt. Generals who had once sworn loyalty to the Council broke away, refusing to accept the rule of a species they had once considered insignificant. A message was sent across the stars. The resistance is rising. The war is not over. Humanity's response. When news of the Rogue Fleet reached Admiral Drake, he was unsurprised. He had expected this. Standing aboard the bridge of his flagship, the Erebus, he watched as a holographic display flickered to life. Enemy fleets were assembling, preparing to strike. They think they still have a chance, Drake murmured. Beside him, Captain Rice, his second-in-command, frowned. Should we send a warning? Drake exhaled slowly. No, we already did. He turned to his officers. Prepare the fleet. We end this now. Across the system, human warships began to move. Engines flared, weapons charged, and an armada unlike any the galaxy had seen surged forward, toward what would be the final battle. The last stand. At the edge of Council space, the Rogue Fleet lay in wait. Hundreds of battleships, dreadnoughts, and interceptors formed a defensive wall around their last stronghold, Fortress Prime. General Cyros stood at the command deck of his warship, eyes scanning the battlefield. His forces were prepared. Humanity would not take this world without a fight. Then the scanners flickered. A wave of static interference rippled through the fleet. Cyros's eyes widened. What? Then he saw them. Humanity had arrived. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace with perfect precision. Dreadnoughts led the charge, flanked by destroyers and fighter squadrons. Thousands of warships moved as one, a force of pure discipline and overwhelming power. And at the center of it all, the Erebus. Cyros snarled. All ships, fire. The battle erupted. Lasers and railgun rounds streaked across the void. Explosions tore through space as ships collided in the most intense firefight the galaxy had ever seen. But it was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The Rogue Fleet's defenses were nothing against humanity's precision strikes. Their ships moved too fast. Their weapons hit too hard. Within minutes, entire battle groups were reduced to burning wreckage. The Hyros refused to accept it. They can't be this strong. Then the Erebus fired. A single shot. A planetary-class rail cannon designed to take out entire fleets in one blow. The shockwave tore through space, ripping through enemy lines. Dozens of ships exploded instantly, reduced to debris. Xyros watched in horror. We never had a chance. Then, his ship vanished in fire. Aftermath. A new era begins. The battle lasted less than an hour. Humanity did not lose a single ship. The rogue fleet, obliterated. Word spread instantly. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Resistance is impossible. Humanity cannot be stopped. The Galactic Council's rule had ended, and in its place, a new empire had risen. The human empire. Kelran, watching from the council chamber, felt a strange mix of fear and awe. This was no longer the galaxy he knew. It was now a galaxy ruled by those who never forgot war. And the council's laughter had long since died. A new order. The war was over. The Galactic Council had surrendered. The last rogue fleets had been wiped out. The galaxy, once ruled by ancient bureaucrats who believed war was dead, now stood at the dawn of a new era. An era ruled by humanity. The aftermath. From the capital world of the former Galactic Council, Kelran watched as human warships hovered in the skies. The once mighty fleets of the Council had been dismantled, their ships either scrapped or repurposed under human command. The Council chamber, once a place where arrogant rulers mocked war, was now silent. High Chancellor Orvis sat in his chair, his feathers dull, his once powerful voice quiet. The weight of what had happened, the fall of everything he had known, had broken him. Kelran could see it in his eyes, the same realization that had spread across the entire galaxy. The age of peace was a lie. And now, only the strong would survive. The final message. The holographic screen flickered back to life. Admiral Drake appeared once more, standing at the command bridge of the Erebus. His face was calm, but his voice carried the weight of absolute power. The Galactic Council is no more. The words sent shockwaves through every remaining government in the galaxy. For too long, you ruled through weakness. You erased war from history, believing it made you civilized. You thought peace was eternal. Drake's gaze hardened. You were wrong. Kelran felt the entire chamber hold its breath. From this moment forward, a new order governs the galaxy. A simple law. A truth you chose to forget. The strong will rule. The weak will fall. War is not dead. It only waits for those foolish enough to ignore it. The transmission ended, and with it, the Galactic Council's era was over. The rise of the human empire. Across the stars, humanity expanded. Their fleets secured planets, their soldiers brought order. Some species submitted willingly, eager to align themselves with the new rulers of the galaxy. Others resisted, and they were crushed. Kelran watched as the transition unfolded. Planets once under Council rule were now part of something new. The Council's old laws were erased, replaced by one simple rule. Survival belongs to those who fight for it. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy was not ruled by bureaucrats. It was ruled by a species that understood war, a species that had been erased, and had come back stronger than ever. Kelran exhaled slowly. Everything had changed. He turned to Orvis, who sat motionless, staring at the empty council chamber. The humans were right, Kelran whispered. You thought war was dead. You thought you were safe. Orvis didn't reply. Kelran stood, stepping toward the massive windows of the chamber. From here, he could see the human flag being raised over the galactic capital. He whispered the final words, words that echoed through the entire galaxy. The laughter has ended. And now, the humans rule.